So, first off, I just want to say a big thank you for your time, Maggie. I cannot wait to get into this. We've been talking about doing a podcast for forever. For
Forever.
everybody watching, Maggie is from Social Moments Marketing. Please introduce yourself and tell people a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. I am the CEO and founder of Social Moments Marketing. So I have been working, I don't know, my company's been around for about a year and a half at this point, which is exciting. We grew very quickly. My background is actually on the B2B side. I was in sales, marketing, account management for several professional services companies. My agency is actually a no niche agency, which is really fun. And that keeps me kind of on my toes a bit, but we essentially have specialized into e-commerce on the B2C side. And then on the B2B side, we specialize in working with other marketing firms as well as software companies. So software companies can be anything from like high tech to SaaS, anything like that.
Amazing. Love it. So Maggie and I met like just over a year ago and we worked together for a while there. And I really just want to like know more about your experience running an agency and growing an agency because like you said you grew really quick, and I remember when you first got started you were like, I don't know if like I'm gonna get there. Like there was a real big question mark over like how you were gonna do it, if you were gonna do it. And not only did
Yeah.
you do it, you like smashed past where you thought you were going to be. So yeah, I just want you to like share a little bit about like what was the experience like to grow it.
I think I'm still in this interesting growing phase where
Mhm.
I started as a freelancer. So my company started like with me just freelancing, and that's what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was just going to be like a social media freelancer. I was going to have a handful of clients. It was going to be great. And then I started thinking bigger because I always think bigger. It's kind of in my, I don't know, it's in my DNA to think bigger, think better, think more, always more. And I also have this like innate drive for success and for succeeding. And I think success can mean a lot of different things to different people. And if success means being a social media freelancer, great. But for me, success meant more like owning a company. It was something that I always wanted to do. It was something that my father had really pushed me to do. And so for me, that was something that I was always kind of interested in doing. So started freelancing. And for the first 4 or 5 months, I think I was freelancing, but very quickly I grew to the point where I wasn't able to kind of manage everything myself. I had too many clients to keep up with on my own freelancing. And so I started thinking about bringing in freelancers, and you and I even talked about this, to work under me. So it was still a freelancing, I was still freelancing, but I had kind of like other freelancers who were working for me. So I was kind of like dipping my toes into this agency model. And then slowly over time, I have kind of developed this full on agency model. So I will say that period where you're going from the freelancer to the agency is actually kind of hard. I would say that was a really difficult period for me because on one hand, I was pitching myself as me, right? I was pitching to clients. I was saying, hey, I'm Maggie. I'm social moments marketing, work with me. And then I would maybe work with them for like a month or two, and then I would pass them to a freelancer. And that's doesn't really work in the long run. So now I've started kind of like at the start of 2025, that my biggest goal has been to really run my agency as an agency, to be more hands off, be less involved in the actual like process of the day to day, and be really only involved. I still do a lot of the account management. Account management is something that I really love. So that's one of the reasons why I still do it. But in the future, I'm also looking to kind of hire somebody to manage that as well. So we're still growing. We're still in this like growing pains kind of model, but we're getting there. And processes are much more in
Yeah.
place. Everything is just starting to get there. But it was so hard, Bethan. Like going from freelancer to agency, there's that like, oh, like that push of like, how do I stop talking about
Yeah.
my agency as me? And how do I start talking about my agency as an agency? As like a, hey, you're not just working with me, you're working with other
Yeah.
specialists. Very difficult.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's like this crunchy stage where everything just
Yeah.
feels really difficult. And I agree with you. I think partly because of that like mental shift to now referring to yourself as an agency, pitching yourself as an agency, understanding and like believing that you're an agency, but also all of the other stuff that comes into it, right? Like the time. That was the thing that I really struggled with, was time. I was pure like, oh, I'll just get a freelancer to help me out and like all of a sudden things will feel easier. And I didn't. I was working just as much. Like it was,
Yeah.
I was still leading so much and like involved in the project so much that every single day I was still working, but I was working on briefing them and working on checking how they were doing things and working on
Yeah.
like making sure the strategy was being followed. And it was just like, oh, I thought this was going to be like, I click my fingers and all of a sudden I run an agency, and it did not work like that for me. I think it took about like 4 or 5 months for me to actually get to a point where I was like the agency owner, and what I did on a day to day looked like agency owner stuff. So like CEO focus, building systems, hiring team, building new business out to bring new clients in. But yeah, like I really thought, I really walked into it thinking like, oh, I'm just going to hire people, and then that's going to make me an agency owner.
That'll be fine. Yeah, I would say it's about the same for me. I just invested in building out my Notion. So I have a Notion portal now for clients, freelancers, myself. I have
Mm-hmm.
like a CEO hub sitting in Notion. It's beautiful. I'm
Nice.
so excited about it. And then the next step is I'm going to be building out my Dubsado, finally finishing my Dubsado build. Um, I know it's been a year, but I'm building out my Dubsado. So we're getting
Yeah.
these like systems in place to help streamline
Yeah.
that side of the business so
As you
that
go
I can
forward.
then start,
Yeah.
right, so I can start focusing more on like building out standard operating procedures, building out, adding in like lists of freelancers so that I can start adding more employees, doing things like that. And I think it's been fascinating to go through the process because I've obviously worked and I've been high level at many companies but they were already established. And so starting a company is so different than,
Yeah.
coming into a company even 2 or 3 years old, so different. And so you make so many mistakes. I've made so many mistakes along the way. I've also had a lot of really great successes. And you just have to kind of like keep going and like mentally just be like, okay, it's gonna get better. It's gonna, like when you're in like that down, you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
it's gonna get better.
Yeah, it is. And it does get easier. There is a day where you wake up and you're like, oh, I did it. Like it's done. I actually got there. But yeah, that's really funny. I love that you mentioned Dubsado as well. Like special shout out to my favorite thing in the world. Anyone who's ever
Yeah,
worked with me will be like, oh, here she goes again.
Dubsado. You were the one who put
um,
me on to Dubsado, actually, and I love Dubsado.
I love it.
Yeah, if you're American, you can use HoneyBook, but I like Dubsado a lot. And I've actually read recently that Dubsado's kind of build outs that they've done recently have surpassed what HoneyBook is doing. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Stripe integrate, everything about
I
it
would
is
say
it's
so.
awesome.
Yeah. There's such flexibility in the program is why I love it. There's just so much you can do. And I think when you first get it, you're like, oh, this is fine. Like this will do. And then you actually realize the capabilities and you're like, holy shit,
Yeah.
like this actually can take
Yeah,
over so much stuff that I do
exactly.
manually
I think like building that out has been a game changer for me. Now I've got to get all my existing
now. Yeah.
clients over to the new. That's like the hard part. Like moving people from point A
The
to
new
point B
system.
is, woo, we'll get there.
Yeah. Having a system is a really good point. I feel like I don't talk about this enough. Most people want to talk about like getting new clients and like hiring their team. That feels like the exciting stuff sometimes. But yeah, you're right. The systems of it all, like I wouldn't be without. Like I know I've talked before about my systems didn't get upgraded until I had like 3 employees, and I literally was using Google Sheets to do my calendars. I had Dubsado, but like it wasn't set up properly, which is like very relatable, I'm sure. And I
Yep.
just like everything was manual. There was no project management system. Everything was just like us sending emails between each other of like, hey, can you do this? And like, hey, can you do that? We had a bloody WhatsApp chat. Like that's how unorganized we were. And because I just carried on with the systems I made when I was freelance, because when I was freelance, I could just have a Google sheet because I was the only person going in there. But it ended up like the stupidest mistakes were being made. And it wasn't even like on purpose. Like I'm not shading my team with this, but it
All
was
right.
just that like maybe a client had come in and they'd like accidentally clicked on a cell and dragged it over, so it had deleted and like made that the whole calendar was
Right.
one caption instead of all of the pictures got deleted off. So then it was like, oh,
Right.
okay, well we've got to go and refine this file in Canva. And like it just was the smallest things that you think wouldn't make a huge impact, but it ended up getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm, mm, mm,
The
mm.
one that
Yeah.
always really bothered me was you couldn't spell check. on a spreadsheet, at least not
Right.
properly. Like it didn't really work right. So there would be typos. And then I was like losing my mind trying to figure out like why the fuck is nobody catching these typos? And it was like as simple as if I just used a real project management system, my Grammarly that I had running would work as normal and
Right.
everything would be fine. But like it
Right.
took me way too long and I lost way too many clients figuring that out.
I think also like it's so easy to get a client. Well, for some people. It's so hard to keep them.
Yeah.
And because clients are fickle, companies are fickle. I'm fickle, right? Like I jump around and do, and people follow that there's that shiny object syndrome, right? So they're just like following the next biggest thing. And so it's easy to
Yeah.
get a new client. It's a little bit harder to keep them. And so, you can have the best sales process in the world. You can have everything set up correctly. But if your internal systems are not set up right, it doesn't matter if you close 100% of your calls,
Pipeline?
like of your
Yeah.
proposals. Yeah, of your proposals, you're not going to keep them. And so I learned that,
Yeah.
I learned one of my goals for this year. I obviously have clients I've worked with for since I founded the company, and even before when I was just doing like freelancer, just me. But my goal this year is to actually keep 75% of my clients because last year I
Yeah.
lost some because of my systems, because of my processes, because I didn't do a good enough job of telling them the results that they were getting, or like explaining to them like, hey, these results are actually really good for you and like for where you are and like against your
Mhm.
benchmarks, against where we started. And I think that just having a better system in place, having more processes in place, it only can help streamline that entire thing. So for me, very important. It's where I wanted to start before I really like hammered down everything else this year. And I also, for my own state, kind of like leveling up from freelancer to agency, to me, having that like system in place where like a client can go in and be like, wow, this is cool. This looks amazing. It functions really well and I love it. Like, perfect. That's my goal. I want a client to go in and be like, wow, this is an
Mhm.
agency. This is top. This is great. I think
Yeah.
that before it was just a content calendar that they were looking at. And now it's like a whole thing. Now they've got a whole hub that they sit in. And
Yeah.
that makes all the difference, right? You look like an agency. You look more professional.
Yeah. I think that really goes systems and client experience go hand in hand, and I don't think people give that enough credit. Like client
Yeah.
experience is usually focused around like account management skills and like people skills and personal skills, which leans into the sales side a lot. But
Yours.
honestly, you could have like the best relationship with a client. Like I had clients leave that I was friends with. Like
Mhm.
we used to go out on nights out. We built such a relationship together. But they were like, "Look, it's I love you, but it's just not working for me." And like only when client experience came up and the systems and the organization was all in place, like did that stop happening. And now I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, like I've got them. We're good. They're sticking
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, exactly. And the more like processes you build, the more the client's going to trust you, the more the client's going to be like, okay, wow, this person really knows what they're doing, and not the person, the agency. They really know what they're
Yeah.
doing. And so I trust them. I'm going to let them kind of like go with this
Yeah.
for the future. So yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to go back to like growing then, because you, as you said at the beginning, grew really quickly. Like I was trying to pull back my numbers and I had down that I think you hit 10K within like 4 or 5 months. And then you hit 25K within like 9 or 10.
Yeah, so okay, so that's true. I will caveat this. So I hit 10K within, and this is kind of going back to the crunch, the issues of like going from freelancer to
Uh-huh.
agency, and then like, what like that growing pains that you can have. And I think I learned a lot of lessons last year. But yes, 10K really quickly hit that. I think probably like in May of last year, if we say that we started the company,
Yeah.
that I started the company really got off the ground like probably January of last year. So yeah, within 4 months. And then by September, I was at 25K. I will caveat that by saying a few things. One, it's really important when you're running an agency, especially when you're going from freelancer to agency, that again you have these like systems in place, because I lost a few clients because I grew too fast. So I grew so fast, I didn't
Mm.
have like the systems in place, I didn't have the freelancers in place. I trusted people who I probably shouldn't have trusted, and because of that, I lost then turned around and lost clients. I also think it's important to stay focused, especially when you're in your initial growth stage. I kind of like went off and like did like a side hustle, like a side project, and it made me lose my focus on my agency and lost my focus on my growth because I was
Yeah.
working on this like side project, which I thought was going to be something that maybe I wanted to bring into my agency, right? It was maybe something that I wanted to add into my agency. So it wasn't, there was a purpose behind it, but it wasn't really what my agency was about. Right. It was kind of a side hustle. You even told me that. You're like, this isn't really, and I was like, it's
Yeah.
fine, Bethan, like it's fine. And you were like, okay. And like, but I needed to learn that lesson on my own. I needed to learn
Absolutely.
that lesson. So when you focus in on your mission, right, your goals, and when you have the processes in place, growth becomes much easier. And then it becomes much more, I don't know the right word, like you grow
I get what you mean. It's
like
like not so much of a
consistent.
roller coaster. It's go up and then
Yeah,
straight back down. It like you are just slowly but surely chucking along, and it keeps growing instead of
exactly.
having
You
these
just
big
keep
peaks and
growing.
troughs.
Maybe you
Got you.
have some dips, but like you're always going up.
Like yeah,
And I think that those were some of my biggest lessons from last year. So yeah, I mean, we grew. It was awesome. We had some really great months. We also had some really like lows. I had some lows. There were nights where I was like crying,
yeah,
right? If you own an agency,
yeah,
you know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, when I look back on where I was last year at the same time, I'm like, wow, like, holy crap, like, how far have I come? Like, this is crazy. And so, and I only want to continue. So I've learned those lessons. I'm sure there will be
yeah,
lessons that I will learn in 2025. But I would say that it's really important to stay focused on the goal. Don't give up on your goal and have the processes in place and just be careful who you trust. Because I definitely put my trust in people
yeah.
who maybe I shouldn't, and it ended up costing me. If you work with the wrong freelancers and the freelancer does something shady, you're the one that gets in trouble, not the freelancer. So keep that in mind
Yes.
as you're working with them.
Yeah, the buck starts and ends with you. It's really
With
tough
me.
when you're like, it's not my fault. Like, I didn't do this, but you still have to face the consequences for it. That is
Yeah.
one of the things I still to this day find really hard as an agency owner
Yeah.
is like, I can't fix every situation, but also my team are doing the best they can. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
drop the hammer and like, it's different if someone does something shady, but like if someone messes up, right? And like I
Yes.
have to then deal with that with the client, and it's really tough because I am never going to throw my team under the bus and be like, oh well, they dropped the ball, it's not my bad,
Yes.
because that
Yes.
a looks bad and is shit on your team. Like that's just not fair. It's a really hard pill to swallow when you're like eating humble pie and taking it for something that you know you didn't
Yes.
do and something that you thought your team would know better than. But I think all of that is really good advice. The one thing I want to say though is like the fact that you did it is such a gold star for you. Like you should wear that as such a badge of honor because a lot of people try for years to get to that point and they work so hard and they stay focused and they make sure they're trusting the right people and they do all the right things, but they still are fighting to get there. So I just want to like say that out loud and like remind you, like the fact that you
100%.
did that is incredible. And
Yeah,
it's only going to get easier and better from here, right? Because you have that in
for
you.
sure.
Now, once you have everything like perfectly clean and mapped out the way you want it to, and you've got the right people around you, hitting that milestone again is going to feel a lot easier. Hitting beyond that milestone to things you haven't even thought about yet is going to be easier.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the long-term goals or this year's goals, my goal is for my annualized revenue, which if you don't know what that means, it means that like at the end of the year, your monthly targets, right? So like what you're making on a month-to-month basis, I want that to be around $1 million. That's my goal, which I realize is huge growth. That's huge growth for me. But I firmly, going back to these processes, I firmly believe that if you have that process in place, everything is scalable. When I first started my first company, I was put into a manager position very, very early. I was like 24. I was managing these like five ladies. And the team was in disarray. They had been managed remotely by a woman who lived in Tel Aviv, Israel. And so the team was just like in total
Oh, goodness.
disarray. And this was back before people
Yeah.
were working from home regularly. So there was no structure in place to
Yeah.
support
There weren't
somebody
things in
remotely
place to make that possible. Yeah. Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, this is also like 2014. So like we didn't really even have like video chat at that time. Like, I mean, we did, like you could like Skype and like, but like Slack, we were using Slack, I remember, and like Slack
Yeah.
Huddle didn't even exist. Like, like this is, I'm not saying we were still using Blackberries, but like we recently had been using Blackberries. Like this was like, like iPhone
Yeah,
was new.
yeah.
So I took over this team and I grew the team. I basically had to replace everyone that was in the team, which was really difficult. Grew the team, grew the business, grew the book, grew the book of business I was managing, got promoted. And then I remember sitting down with the CEO one day and he goes, or no, it was a CFO who was my mentor and the CFO. And he goes, I want you to think about something, Maggie, like, you're managing right now $1 million book, but $1 million book looks really different than a $15 million book. And the team that you manage and the way that you manage and how you have the team structured looks different between one and $15 million.
Yeah.
And then from 15 to 30, and then from 30 to 50, whatever, however big. And eventually, when I left that company, I was managing a team that was $15 million. I'd grown, it was a different team, but I'd grown the team from 3 to 15 million. I
Hmm.
managed that team for 4 years. I had to restructure because we grew so fast. I had to restructure that team twice, three times. It's because every time we would grow,
Yeah.
we had to change how we worked because we were growing so fast. And I think that's also like as you grow, as you're going from freelancer to agency, there's that like crunchy period, but I'm sure there's others. There are other crunchy periods too. And so I'm looking forward to those, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I say quite often, like, what gets you to 10K months won't get you to 20K months. And I
100%.
know agency owners that are at 100K months. And again, like, they are using different processes and systems. Like, you have to continually level up. And especially in this environment where you're working for yourself, because if you're not leveling up, then you're moving backwards. Like, if you're not
Hmm.
growing your agency, if you're staying, even if you're not moving up within like 30% a year, I would say. If you're doing anything less than that, everything is getting more expensive. Like
Right.
you're basically losing money if you're not growing at a fast enough rate, even if you feel like you're not losing money because you're not going down, you still kind of are.
Right.
And it's really tough because people can be like, oh, but this worked for me. So like I want to keep doing what worked for me.
Yeah.
But you have more time. Like you have more of everything when you're only making 10K months. And I know, like, I say only making 10K months, and that's people's like big goal. But if you compare that to like what some of the bigger agencies are making, it's a drop in the ocean. And the way that they would
Yes.
approach that is vastly different. And what the role of the agency owner looks like is vastly different. And like, as you go through, you really do have to automate, you have to optimize, you have to just keep building and keep growing every single element. And that's hard.
Right.
I'll
Right.
say, I'll hold my hands up. There became a point where I was content. I didn't want to keep getting bigger. I didn't want more staff. I didn't want to keep growing. I just want to grow at such a rate enough that I'm not losing money on my agency and that I'm living a good life and that everything feels really good to us because I wanted to do other things. I wanted to
Right.
start coaching, launch digital products, run my YouTube channel. Like there's other things, other goals that I had. And you really do have to like align with yourself and what you want to figure out how to do it in a way that's going to like continue to evolve with you. I mean, I could
Right.
keep going on about this all day. I need to like put a pin in this, but
Well,
it
I had
really
a call
is such a big
yesterday.
part of running a business.
Yeah, I had a call yesterday. I've been trying to meet more with women in the business because I feel like, just generally speaking, there's not that many women. I feel like in social media, yes, but agency owners, no. And also when
Yes,
you get into
agreed.
like the broader marketing agency space, even fewer women. So when you get into like SEM, SEO, website, whatever, even fewer women.
Yes.
So I tried to meet with women.
Uh-huh.
She was telling me she's a CEO of a white labeling marketing agency. And she was essentially like saying, we're 2.5 million. We want to keep going. But she was like, I've removed myself completely from the day to day. My entire purpose, she just
Uh-huh.
comes from operations background. So she's basically saying, my entire purpose is to ensure that like everything is streamlined, but it gives me time to also do other things that I love to do. Like she has a podcast, she's got some other things and they're still growing, right? They're still a growing agency. They're still, and she's got people under her, employees under her who are working and ensuring that the company, but she has the final say. She has the final sign off, but she's completely removed herself from the day to day. It gives her more time to focus on other things that really are her passion at this point. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of the dream, right? But it's also, if she was more involved in the day to day, right? You have to ask, like, okay, well, would it grow faster? Would it grow even slower? Because sometimes we're the bottleneck, like
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
us
yeah.
getting involved. us getting involved is like actually not the thing. It's not what we want. Like at this point, yes, I should be
Yeah.
involved, but like, where when you get to that level, when you're at like a two, three, five, $10 million business, should the CEO really be involved in the day to day? To me, probably not. They should be meeting with partners. They should be meeting with like the very high ticket clients. They should be handling like kind of like the overall strategy for the company, meeting with like whoever else is in their C-suite, but they shouldn't really be doing that. And then that like potentially, depending on how much time that takes, potentially opens you up for other things, more thought leadership, content, especially in our world. That's super important. So I think it's
Yeah.
just like fascinating to see kind of where you can go as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And there's like no right way and no wrong way, which is fascinating to me as well. Because like when you look
Exactly.
back to there was a formula, there was a way to build a business that was successful, and there was a way to build a business that was going to fall on its face. And in this era of like the
Hmm.
online business space and like doing everything in this non-traditional way, that's changed. And now there's like so many forks in the road and you can go in any direction as long as you stay profitable.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're coming to the end,
Exactly.
but I always ask the question of like getting your final nugget. So if you were talking to somebody who is like just in that stage of freelancer, getting fully booked and wanting to look at potentially growing an agency, what would be the thing you would say to them, like to prepare them for what's to come?
I would say that as you're fully booking your agency, expect to have growing pains and expect to have complications. It's not going to be easy, but it's worth it, especially if you have
Mhm.
the drive and the determination to build something more. I think I have a lot of friends who
Yeah,
are freelancers who want to just be freelancers. They don't want to grow an agency. It's not necessarily what they're interested in. They just want to do the freelance thing. They have a few clients, they're happy, they make 10K a month or whatever, right? And they're good, they're golden. I have other friends who have built agencies and who have that want more. I don't think either is the wrong way. So I don't want to like come across as like
yeah,
being one way is right, one way is wrong. I obviously went one direction, but I have a lot of friends who went the other direction, and I think both are good,
yeah.
but who want more and who've built more. And I think like everybody kind of experiences that same like growth from going from freelancer to agency is a struggle because you have to, again, hiring the right people. You were talking about like if your team makes mistakes, like you being the buck stops here kind of person. And that's absolutely true. But also making sure that you hire the right people, that you bring on the right people, that you have the right clients, like that you're not just taking any client that says yes, that you're actually getting
Yeah.
clients that align with whatever your values are and whatever you have deigned to be your niche, whatever that means. For me, even though I'm in a niche agency, I look for very specific values within clients that I work with. And so I love working with women. I love working with people who have values that are around kind of like sustainability and who have values around like innovation. I find that to just be so fascinating. So I like to work with companies that are very innovative. And so for me, that
Yeah.
aligns a lot with software. Right. So I end up working with a lot of software clients, but I also work with consumer clients that are innovative, that have innovation. I think that's really important. I know people say that a lot, but it's really hard when you have a client, like a
It's
prospective
true.
client
Yeah.
in front of you to be no, say no. You're like, oh, this could be like X thousands of dollars a month, and I'm saying
Yeah.
no to this. Like it's hard. But speaking from experience, after I did do that, it say no. Say no to the thing. Or you can say yes. And then after 2 months, you can say, hey, by the way, this isn't a fit. Sorry. Don't be afraid
Yeah.
to lose the client. I think even for freelancers, I can't tell you the number of freelancers that I talk to who say, "Oh, I have this like awful client, but I can't drop them because I will lose X amount of
You
dollars
need the
or
money. Yeah.
pounds or euros and I need the money." And I'm like, give them a 30-day notice and then just go sell. And it's
Go hard
scary.
at selling. I completely agree.
It's so scary. And I mean, I can say that I have a safety net, right? I have savings, so I can say that. But I can't tell you the number of times I've told people this, like, you are miserable. Quit your job and find
Yeah.
something. Quit this company, quit this client, whoever it is, and go find something else that's better. And
Yeah.
then when it
Completely agree.
happens, then they finally do it. Somehow that relationship ends, whether the client ends it or they end it, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so much happier." Like you're right, and I'm like, "Yes." Like end. If it's not working for you, end it. Like because
Yeah.
it's not.
And usually it's like, I'm so much happier and I have a new client who pays me more and respects me and I
And
love working with them.
and
And it's like, oh, well, it all worked out.
And also it kind of, to me, that's like some internal competition too. Like you quit something and then you have 30 days to like find something new. And so you're like, okay, I've got to like go out and find this client that's going to be awesome. That's like, but then you're the one reaching out to them. So you're looking for things that align with your values, with your niche, with whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so for you, it suddenly the doors open. All these doors will open for you. I don't know if I necessarily believe in like manifesting and things like that. I'm not like super woo woo, but like, I do believe that when you put yourself out there, people will find you. And it's true. It happens to me all the time. I'm like, I'm ready to get a new client. And then suddenly I have, 5 leads in my inbox. I'm like, where did these even come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and like, but it's referrals and it's people on from coming, finding me from my website and it's my LinkedIn and it will happen for you. So
Yeah. Stuff
just,
that
you
you
have to.
always do.
Yes, 100%. Or my Instagram.
Yeah.
People love my Instagram. Shout out to my one of my team members who runs my Instagram. But like they love my Instagram posts. And so I have people in my inbox who come to me from my Instagram posts. So, it's great. That's my biggest piece of advice. Fire the people who don't work for you.
Yeah.
Stick with the fit.
Yeah.
Whatever
On
fits
both
you.
sides. On
Yes.
freelancers and clients. Yeah, love it. I think that's a really good point, and something that's like maybe we focus too much about like the positives and like get ready, like this is going to be amazing. And the reality is like you are going to get some shitty red flag clients that you hate. So fire them as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, not even like, and there are shockingly, I mean, I think I don't want to like badmouth clients at all, but like, I think that there's so many businesses out there. There's a percentage that aren't the
Yeah.
best fit for you, and that's what matters. Maybe they fit better for me. Maybe they're just not a good fit for you. Maybe they, whatever. But, you just
Yeah,
have
no, there
to,
is a running joke in the group coaching calls right now that I have to tell you about, where we've been
uh-huh.
joking about how we're not emotionally regulating our grown male clients for them anymore. Like, if they're upset and they want to throw a tantrum, it's not my job to emotionally regulate a grown man. And it's like become a joke because it's happened so often to like this whole group of female agency owners who are all like, oh yeah, I've got this real like he never listens to me and he doesn't take what I say seriously, and then like he has a tantrum when nothing goes right, and it's like, yeah, it's not our job to like make them feel happy.
Shocking.
They're panicking about their business and they're taking it out on us. They need to go and have like a quiet minute in the corner until they feel better, and then they can come back and then they're allowed to talk to mummy and daddy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, 100%. I mean, I love
We've
my
all been there.
Yeah, I love my male and my female clients equally, but I do tend to look for female clients. That mostly is about just wanting to support women in business versus
Same.
preferring working with women over working with men. I just think that we should be supporting more women-owned businesses, and I'm a woman-owned business. My company is a woman-owned business, and I want to work with other companies that are women-owned business. I think that's my prerogative to decide if I want to do that. But I do work with a handful of male-owned businesses, and they're great. But if they weren't great, I would
Yeah.
leave. Like,
Yeah, no, this is absolutely not a generalized. I've worked with incredible. Most of my team are male, weirdly enough, in
yeah,
my agency. I have one other female team member, but there just is sometimes toxic people that you're working with, and that can be a man or a woman. But it's just like been a theme at the minute that there's, like I said, grown men who don't know how to manage their emotions.
I love that.
But that is, I have worked with such incredible male clients as well. It's not to say that that's everybody and that you should
Yeah,
avoid men and working with
yeah.
them.
I don't.
Like, just to be clear, that's not my advice.
I think like as you grow from freelancer to agency, with those growing pains, you're going to lose some clients, probably. I remember seeing this woman on LinkedIn. I don't remember who it was, and she was like bragging because she had never lost a client ever. And she'd been in business for like 3 years or something. And she's like, I have 100% client retention, whatever. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, and so,
I mean,
is
either
it
she's
true?
great at like qualifying, or that's something different and she's got some headache clients that she's fighting through to keep for the income.
Or she only has two clients, and so she's able to do that because she has two clients and she can give them her whole day,
True.
right? We don't know the whole story, but you see that it's the same idea as like
Yeah.
people being like, oh my God, I hit my 10K month, like who's on me? And then you're like not at 10 and you're like, oh, I'm not as good. And so I think it's that same mentality. Like social media is fake and it's okay to lose a client. And I personally struggle a lot. I take it personally when I lose a
Yeah.
client. I'm always like, what did I do wrong? What did I mess up? What did I? And it's like, but sometimes, like, I had a client last year who stopped working with me because she was about to go out of business because the election was happening in the US and ads became got so expensive. And so people weren't buying, she relied heavily on ads, on
Yeah.
ad spend, and people weren't buying her product. And she was like, I literally am not even paying myself. I cannot pay you. Like, that's not my
Yeah.
fault, right? Like I don't run ads. I'm organic social
Yeah.
media
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So like that's not on me. So from my perspective, sometimes and you should do a deep dive and a retrospective every time you lose a client. Every month you should be doing some kind of some kind of retrospective and reporting and things
Yeah.
like that. Well, especially when you lose a client, you should be doing some kind of retrospective work. But you've got to keep getting back up and get back out there and just make it better the next time. If a client leaves and they say, "Oh, I was unhappy with XYZ thing," make sure that XYZ thing never happens again, you know? And as long as you set those kind of like boundaries, you'll be fine. And I think like I signed a lot of clients last year. I lost some clients last year, but net positive on my clients. I'm working with
Yeah.
clients that I've worked with since for a year and a half. I'm happy. I firmly believe that the clients that I'm still working with are the clients that align very well with me and with who I am in my business. And that to me is the most
Mm.
important.
Yeah.
So
I love
yeah.
that. I think that's really important take home for everybody. Thank you so much, Maggie, for your
Yeah.
time and for sharing so openly about your
Hey,
experience. I think
of course.
it helps a lot for people to like hear that and see, and if they recognize themselves in your journey, like to not panic and think that things are going to go left. If it feels really hard right now, you can still come out the other side feeling great.
Yeah, it's gonna be fine. Don't give up. There was a period in
It's gonna be
like
fine.
early
It's
December.
gonna be
There was a period
fine.
in early December where I was like, do I really want to do this or do I just want to go back to freelancing and just like hit my 10K a month and be happy? And like those times are gonna happen too.
Nah.
Don't give up.
Keep pushing. You got this.
Yeah, you
Thank you
got it.
so much. And
Thank you.
I'll pop your links in the description box below so everyone can come and connect with you.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye everyone.